you know what? Everything starts with an idea. And this one, I love that idea here behind me particularly well. It's the artist Olafur Eliasson, and he created the rainbow panorama on the rooftop of Aarhus Art Museum in Denmark. And what's so special about it is that when you're on the top of the building, you can walk around in a 360-degree and view far into the distance with different colors, lenses. I started out 30 years ago as a designer, and it was really there and then I got very interested in art. A little bit later, I became a futurist because I was very curious to understand the world of trends. I was asking questions like, where do trends come from? Who influences design? And why is it that some companies always get it right where others fail? Back then, 20 years ago, when I started to have ambitions to become a futurist, there wasn't so much competition. So, of course, I had an entrepreneurial thought. Why not make my own trend book? And I did exactly that. Then I booked a ticket to Paris. I had a few appointments with some agencies, trend agencies, and I went there to show my work. And what happened was really took me completely by surprise, because I saw 3 or 4 companies, and they all said the similar thing. Why do you want to work for us? This is great work. You're our competitor. And I just didn't know how to react to that. So I traveled back home to London. And then I thought to myself, what's next? A few weeks later, maybe a month later, I walked through another art gallery. I was at Tate Britain, and literally there and then, I saw the writing on the wall. It was William Blake's quote, and he wrote, "I must create a system or be enslaved by another man's." And it was there and then I decided I want to do my own trend system. So if you could sum my idea up in one slide, this is the idea. It's my trend atlas with the building blocks of the future. It came natural to me that my idea had to be shaped as a map, because my father, who was a fisherman, he always said to me that wherever you go, Annelise, get a map so you can orientate yourself. And in fact, he taught me everything that I know about maps. Especially that maps are a sense-making tool. There was one thing that I had learned when I did my first trend book, and that was that the world of trends were very confusing. There were different kinds of trend forecasters. And of course, I came from a design background, and when you asked people who were very sort of scientific-oriented, they said the only thing that counts is numbers. But what I did was I wanted to create a 360-degree outlook, a little bit like Olafur Eliasson's rainbow panorama. I thought, why not make a panorama of the future? So I started by exploring the scientific dimensions. I looked into pestle trends, politics, economics, societal trends, technology, environment, and legislation. I then also started to look into the social dimension. I studied people's lifestyle patterns, demographics, organizations, communication, and I then pretty much had a good idea of the sort of, I would say, the foundation of society. But again, I was very curious, and with a design background, I wanted to know about people's feelings. So I also set out to explore the emotional landscape of people. What does well-being mean? Why are people so interested in creating a better world? And why do we consume the way we do? Why do we make the lifestyle choices we do? And then, of course, to find the answers for that, I also had to explore the spiritual dimension, which is also very much about people's quest for the good lives, our values and ethics. And that also feeds into how organizations will have to understand tomorrow's people. What was curious about this A4 summary of the future is that when we look at the future in one map with like little building blocks of the future, like Lego bricks, we understand that everything we do, everything we see, everything, all the media that feeds things into us, everything is closely interconnected. So how does that work? Well, this is sort of my brain. It's a brain of a designer. And what we have to do, the way we think, we really have to understand the interconnectedness of everything. When we look back to the 20th century, it was very much a situation where there was only one P that counted, and that was the P for profit. But when we enter in now to the 21st century, we redrawing the map of success. And of course, the equation of success, we cannot measure that just with one P for profit. We need a much wider definition. And this is why I believe that the other P's, the P of people and planet and purpose, is really important when we want to understand the interconnectedness of things. And those 4 P's are also very important when we want as companies to dive into understand the real needs and wants of people. They are really essential to telling good stories about the future. And this is why in 2012 I decided to create the 4P business model. Because once you have a positive impact on people and planet, and you have a purposeful ethos to match, what happens is that you feed into your environment rather than just feeding off it, and that leads to a much more sustainable bottom line. I would like to share my 4P vision of the future to give you sort of a mini course in how to think like a futurist. And we also have a workshop afterwards, but I just thought I would give you the fast-forwarded story about the 4P and my dream vision for the future. When we look to the first P for people, for me, it's very much about understanding that traditional family association, the way we get together as people, that is sort of dissolving into a much more fluid relationship with people and also the businesses we work for and deal with. In fact, I will say we are much less defined by society constructs. We are sort of self-curating our own life. And we are very curious about how we can get more out of life. We basically want meaningful experiences. And organizations will have to understand that in any DNA of a successful organization, it has to have a lot of meaningful experience embedded in anything they say, anything they do. And why is that? Well, according to surveys, and this was a sample done of almost 500,000 people over a period of years, it found that only 1 in 5 brands are perceived to have a meaningful impact on people's feeling of well-being. And to that, I would like to say, any organizations who still live in the 20th century with only 1 P for profit, I don't think there's any of those here in the audience, and of course not. But in case, just go home and do a little bit of corporate soul searching, because that's needed. Ask yourself your purpose beyond profit. Why do people get up in the morning and go work for your organization? Why would you buy this company's products and services? And more importantly, why would anyone invest in your organization? Big questions to answer. I believe the answer is in this planet. It's very much about the caring ecosystem, the collaboration that we see sort of flourishing out there. It's about organizations inviting their people, even their customers, in to understand the sort of a more playful approach to work-life balance, embedding well-being in anything they say and do, because this is really important. How do you inspire people to engage in lifelong learning? You have to show that you really care. Because lifelong learning is needed in an era of automation. It's needed also to foster what I call emotional intelligence in society. And to this, companies and their leaders need to wake up and tell heartfelt stories about the future. I recently read a very interesting story about what IKEA is doing, and I happened to just find this snapshot from my mobile phone. I didn't even know it was IKEA. I took a snap while I was in Copenhagen last year, and this building or this installation in the background is the grow room. And it is IKEA Space 10, it's an innovation lab, where they have a whole network of people from all over the world, inspiring them to ask big questions about the future, about urbanization, resource shortage, etc., etc. But it was also to open the dialogue of inviting greens into the cities. And really now you can download this particular installation by IKEA and you can build one at home. But to activate the P for people and the P for planet, we need a whole new approach to leadership. Prosperity, what it means, is being rewritten, and it is a scenario where I, as a futurist, want to see a capital P in leadership, the P for purpose. It's also a scenario where and I'm not naive, I know we live in a time of lots of data overload, fake news, but it is a scenario where I want to see leaders in the future saying, I don't just want to be the best in the world, I want to be the best for the world. And who puts this very well in what leaders should do and understand what their job is Reid Hoffman. He's the co-founder of LinkedIn. He said something profound, and I really had to think about it 3 times, but he's so right. He said, a leader's job is not to put greatness into people. It is discovering that it's already there and then cultivate an environment that brings out that greatness. And this is key in a society, the liquid society. I saw the beautiful presentation before. This is another snapshot from the High Line in New York by night. It's another story about smart cities, because we need cities to be smarter. And the only way cities can be smarter is when they invite the citizen and businesses to work together to create a better city, a better environment. Copenhagen is doing that, and I'm really proud of that. They use design thinking in policy making, and also their Mind Lab is a cross-ministerial creative lab that asks citizens and businesses to work together to co-create on better futures. Done the same thing in New York with a lot of success, and I guess the future is all about the cities, how well we manage our resources, because after all, 80% of global GDP is accumulated in cities. So if we don't get our cities to work very well, people and businesses won't work either. And this is also the key message in the previous talk, but really to understand how those 4 Ps are connecting. This is a little gift to you guys. It's a map over the future. This is my 4P diagram that connects the dots. And this little roadmap can give you some idea of how you can see the bigger picture in one view. It's all of the trends in the little diagram, the trends I've talked about. I've then attached little values to them, because when you have those building blocks, you can tell really inspiring stories about the future. And why is that important? Because stories of the future is how organizations can start to activate all the stakeholders within the organization, outside the organization. Then they can start to create ideas of what the future might look like and then create solutions. When we look at the sort of left brain, everything you can measure, we have the rational touch points. So when we do some of the things I talked about before, we cultivate people, then of course we create social capital. And that's key to the bottom line, to sustainable growth. And it's very much the model that I think we cultivate here in the Nordic countries, but it's also something that we see the rest of the world is trying to do. The softer touch point, the more emotional touch point, is all about community power, collaboration, and working together, because that's key to personal growth. Because when people grow, then organization grows, and what's good for organizations and people is, of course, good for society. Now, to sort of end on a good note and hopefully inspire you all to go home and make your vision for the future, because after all, it is the weekend and we got more here at TED. I think my biggest message to you, I just want to remind everyone here, is that the future is not just somewhere we go, we create the future. All of you can become active change makers, but please sit down and dream big, make your map over the future, because when you can imagine it, you can make it happen. And in my world, success It's not a secret, it's a system. Thank you.